Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean health authorities designate more high-risk facilities vulnerable to COVID-19. Those include wedding venue buffets and funeral homes. Guests there will have to sign a visitor's log and take other precautions. Russia becomes the first country to approve a COVID-19 vaccine. Details are scarce, though, and the vaccine still hasn't been through large-scale clinical trials. And the number of people employed in South Korea falls for a fifth month in a row compared to last year. On the bright side, the decline in July was smaller than in June. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The South Korean government has made some changes to the COVID-19 prevention guidelines as we approach the fall when more people will be getting married. Starting from next Wednesday, buffet restaurants at wedding venues will be classified as COVID-19 high-risk facilities. This means guests should follow virus prevention guidelines like registering in the visitor's log, either on paper or by scanning the venue's QR code with their phones. They also have to use plastic gloves when serving themselves at the buffet. The government has also advised funeral homes to use the QR code system and to use thermal imaging cameras to take people's temperatures as they come in. South Korea on Wednesday reported 54 new cases of COVID-19, most of them local. Russia has become the first country to approve a COVID-19 vaccine. It still hasn't gone into the third and final phase of clinical trials, and there's limited information about it. But President Putin says his own daughter has already been vaccinated. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
Russia has declared victory in the global race to make a COVID-19 vaccine. On Tuesday, President Vladimir Putin said Russia is the first country to approve a vaccine. Developed by the country's Gamaleya Institute, the drug is named Sputnik-V in homage to the world's first satellite Russia launched during the Cold War. Putin said the drug underwent necessary tests and forms a lasting immunity to COVID-19, adding that one of his daughters was also given it. However, the authorities have not yet provided data on the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. The approval comes without going through the final Phase 3 trial, which involves tens of thousands of people being administered it over a months-long period. This has prompted experts to raise concerns.
And if the reports of the vaccine so far having been tested on a few dozen people are true, then that is way too early in the process to actually approve a vaccine. It may be promising, but we may be taking that a step too far in terms of any regulatory approvals at this stage.
The international community remains largely skeptical too. In response to Russia's announcement, a U.S. top health official said the point is not to be the first. Germany also echoed the pessimism, pointing to a lack of information. The World Health Organization says it's in discussions with Moscow calling for an objective assessment of its safety and effectiveness. Despite concerns, Moscow says it will first voluntarily provide the vaccine to medical staff and then to teachers. It expects to mass produce the drug by the end of the year. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
The UN Security Council has granted a waiver from its sanctions so that South Korea's Gyeonggi-do Province can supply North Korea with materials to build greenhouses. The Council's Committee on North Korea says the waiver, approved on August 4th, is for materials worth $368,000. The greenhouses will be used to grow food and improve the nutrition of vulnerable people in Nampo and Pyeongan-namdo Province. Gyeonggi-do Province is up to 6 months to send the materials before the waiver expires. The number of people employed in South Korea declined last month compared to last July. Perhaps not surprisingly, but the decline was smaller than the month before. Ji-young has the details.
South Korea has seen 5 months of job figures worse than the previous year amid the economic fallout from COVID-19. This is the first time since 2009 in the aftermath of the global financial crisis that the figure has been lower on year for 5 months in a row. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of people working in July was 27.1 million, down 277,000 from the same period a year earlier. The number of unemployed was the highest for the month of July since 1999, and the unemployment rate in July was 4%, the highest for the month of July since 2000. All age brackets except for people aged over 60 saw a drop in the number of people working on year.
The employment rate of people aged between 15 and 64 has dropped by 1.1 percentage point on year, with job losses for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
By sector, the largest drop was in the restaurants and lodging sector, which fell by 225,000 jobs, or 9.5% on year. An expert says the impact of COVID-19 on the job market was mostly in the first half of the year because people are now getting used to living with the outbreak.
Uncertainty in the job market due to the outbreak is expected to continue throughout this year, but it is forecast to get better next year with an improvement in the global economy.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said on social media Wednesday that although the situation is grim, July's on-year figure is improving compared to the previous 3 months.
The finance minister said that the government recognizes the seriousness of the situation and is looking to create some 575,000 jobs through the third supplementary budget and to create more jobs through the Korean New Deal project. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Also, to try and stimulate the local economy, the South Korean government is going to issue new discount coupons to more than 8 million people. You'll be able to use them to enjoy movies, travel, accommodations, performances, exhibitions, and sports. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism has set aside more than $76 million for the coupons from its portion of the government's extra budget. For accommodations, the coupons offer discounts of up to about $35. For cultural performances like musicals, it's up to about $7 per person. The coupons will be available from this Friday. You can find out how to get them by visiting the Culture Ministry's website. The government and the ruling party say they're going to use all possible means to support the South Korean people's recovery from the flooding and landslides caused by this year's record-breaking monsoon. This will include direct financial aid. Take a listen.
The government has decided to double the amount of natural disaster relief in the case of death and double the amount of flood support aid.
The spokesperson added that it won't be a quick fix, but a full-scale, long-term recovery. As for drawing up another supplementary budget, the government and the ruling party said that'll be decided later. If there is one, it would be the fourth extra budget just this year. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Song Soo-young, professor of finance at Chungang University. Professor Song, good to have you back on.
Yeah, thank you for having me in this interview. Okay.
Well, on Wall Street, the S&P broke its 7-session winning streak despite anticipation of a vaccine. Part of that is still the holdup on the stimulus bill. Today, Korea's Kospi index, though, turned higher right at the end of the session. What's the story in the stock markets?
Yeah, overall in the worldwide, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq Composite in the United States had shown quite a large percentage of change of the drop. Particularly 0.38 percentage point in Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the Nasdaq Composite has shown 1.69 percentage drop. S&P 500 also shows that the negative numbers in dropping 0.8%. Whereas in China, Shanghai Composite has shown also the drop of the 1.63%. That may reflect the recent surge in the Shanghai Composite Index. And in Japan has shown a positive increase, 0.34, and the FTSE in the UK 100 index has shown 0.68 percentage increase. Whereas in Korea, our Kospi index has shown the positive increase, and whereas the Kosdaq market has shown the declining. But I'm interestingly enough, in the world, the global commodity market, particularly the gold futures, and has shown a little bit negative numbers. Now, currently, it's trading in the market. Therefore, the size of negative numbers is become smaller. So, I'm not sure how does this indicate the future of the currency's value against the gold and the silvers. but at least this kind of some volatility will continue. In the meantime, the crude oil and the Brent crude futures had shown some positive. So this indicates the world economy is expected to recover. But we have to take into account of some second wave, whether second wave will take place or not. That will determine the global economy's path in the future.
Well, the OECD is forecasting the Korean economy this year will shrink by 0.8%. That would give Korea the best growth figure in the OECD. As you point out, that still depends on what happens with the virus, of course. What do you see happening with the Korean economy?
Yeah, Korean economy so far in June 2020, the OECD report, there they have estimated the projected Korean economic growth rate by negative 1.2%. If with some second wave of the outbreak of coronavirus, that will be as low as minus 2.5%. That was June estimation forecast, but in August 11th, they have adjusted in the single coronavirus case is 0.8%, whereas if there is another second wave of the coronavirus outbreak, then it will be decreased to minus 2%. But however, this is even in June and the current point of time, at the current moment, the best performance worldwide, even including China and some other smaller countries. So far, the Korean economy has survived and has performed quite relatively very good than the other remaining part of the world. So still, currently, that requires definitely some more expansionary fiscal policy for the economy to support the economy. But relatively, we are in a very favorable position when we consider the relative percentage of the public debt against the GDP is just 5.4%. That is the lowest among the countries in OECD countries. The supplementary budget impact on the GDP is the lowest among the several advanced and OECD countries.
It is impressive, but we're not out of the woods yet because the number of people employed in Korea continues to fall. It's fallen for a fifth straight month compared to last year. The decline, though, was smaller last month than in June. What do you make of this, Professor? We're almost out of time, but also what needs to be done?
Yeah, currently, at least we have the employment numbers of people has been declining, but the magnitude of the employment rate has been reduced, but the speed is declining. Therefore, at least this may indicate that our economy currently has managed to relatively well, but when we compare the other countries. But however, if there is in OECD data and library has shown very interesting interactive pictures showing that Korea has going to, even with the second wave, our unemployment rate has been reached 5.4% in the worst case, but the other countries such as Italy or Spain or France, even Germany has shown really the impact would be almost 30%. So that indicates that even though clearly our unemployment rate and employment rate cannot be affected by the coronavirus, but however, the magnitude will be the minimal level among the worldwide. And also, I expect our economy, as long as the world trade is put on some recovery path, then our economy will have some V-shaped, very pent-up surge of the economic growth rate. But What I'm most concerned is some kind of the political and the geopolitical danger or risk, particularly in between China and the U.S. That is the most concern. But otherwise, our economy is expected to recover relatively sooner and much better than the remaining part of the world.
Well, let's hope that scenario plays out. All right, Professor, thanks so much for coming on today. Always good to get your insights.
Thank you.
An AI startup hub in Seoul is helping create jobs and foster talent in South Korea's artificial intelligence industry. Called the AI Yangjae Hub, the facility has been helping more than 80 AI startups grow and work at low cost, creating up to 400 new jobs and spurring $51 million in sales. In addition, the city's offered a specialized curriculum for more than 500 people looking for jobs in the AI industry. Local residents can use the hub by making a reservation on the Yangjae Hub's website. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.